Dan Anderson is the president and CEO of Kingdom Way Ministries and a strategic and leadership coach with 5 Capitals. Helping marketplace leaders thrive in life, business, and ministry is the mission at Kingdom Way, and they provide an abundance of services and connection events intended to further God's kingdom within the business community of Northern Colorado and beyond. Dan's professional career began in ministry, where he was a vital part of a pair of successful church plantings, and he later served for many years as the head pastor of Monument Bible Church in Scottsbluff, Nebraska. Dan has an entrepreneur's heart, and when an opportunity arose to move to Northern Colorado and reinvigorate Kingdom Way, which had been in near hibernation, Dan took a leap of faith and moved his family. It hasn't been easy turning a hibernating ministry into a stable personal income, and Dan goes deep into the challenges he's faced along the way, and even describes a low period during the pandemic when he contemplated suicide. Dan shares his story in the process of recovering his faith and hope from there, and how God blessed his perseverance. Kingdom Way offers chapters quite similar to those at LoCo Think Tank, but with a decidedly faith-oriented curricula, and it's a treat to get behind the curtain with Dan as to his opportunities and challenges, which parallel my own in so many ways. I hope you'll tune in and be both challenged and inspired by my conversation with Dan Anderson.
Let's have some fun.
Welcome to the LoCo Experience Podcast. On this show, you'll get to know business and community leaders from all around Northern Colorado and beyond. Our guests share their stories, business stories, life stories, stories of triumph and of tragedy, and through it all, you'll be inspired and entertained. These conversations are real and raw, and no topics are off limits. So pop in a breath mint and get ready to meet our latest guest. Welcome back to the LoCo Experience Podcast. This is your host, Kurt Baer, and I'm here today with Dan Anderson. And joy to be here today with you, Dan. Dan is the founder, president, and CEO of Kingdom Way Ministries, as well as a strategic and leadership coach for 5 Capitals. And so let's start with Kingdom Way, because that's what I know more about, and there's probably more to share in that space. What is Kingdom Way for those that have never heard of you?
Well, first of all, Kurt, man, thank you for having me on today. I've been looking forward to this, and I just so applaud what you're doing and love what you're doing, respect you greatly, so I'm just honored to be with you. So Kingdom Way, our main mantra is that we help marketplace leaders to thrive in life and business and ministry. And we have a lot of environments. I'm sure we'll talk a little bit about that. But what I've noticed over the years is there's a lot of CEOs, business owners that want to be faith-driven, but they don't know how to incorporate that into their daily life. And there's a lot of them that are looking for greater freedom, purpose, joy, organizational perspective, impact. But the clutch is slipping somewhere between theory and what they really want in reality. And so that's really what all of our environments through Kingdom Way Ministries is trying to provide, is to help them just gain traction in each of those areas that they really want to develop in their lives personally, emotionally, spiritually, all those aspects of personal life, but also their professional life, and just blending the two. So one of the things we talk a lot about is
work-life integration. I'm hearing
absolutely. And so one of the things we talk a lot about is because most of the people that are connected with us, not all, but are pretty strong persons of faith in some capacity, and they really want to take Sundays or a weekend service if they go to church, for example, and the inspiration they receive there, and they want to bring that into their Monday workplace. And we kind of talk about helping them to bring Sunday's inspiration into Monday's perspiration.
I like it. I like it. And so, and don't take this as anything but a compliment, but you kind of sound like a pastor. were you a pastor before this calling found you?
So I guess if I was in a meeting, I'd introduce myself as a recovering pastor.
Are you still a pastor? I think you could probably claim that title too, right? You must.
So once a pastor, always a pastor, I think. I still have a pastor's heart. I was a pastor for over 20 years. Oh, wow. I've been doing this for 10 years now, but I feel like I've been a pastor in a lot of ways to the people that we connect with.
I remember distinctly. Do you remember where we were when we met in person?
I do. I remember at the Marriott here in Fort Collins, and we were both meeting with a coach, kind of helping us troubleshoot things. And we were kind of in the same position, just kind of starting off.
Yeah, and we had similar but different offerings and a lot of resonance.
And I thought you were a really strange bird there, then Kurt.
I am.
And that's true. But I've grown to love you over the years. It was just an acquaintance then, but now we're a little bit more than that.
Yeah, I think I had 3 chapters at the time, or maybe I had just kind of gone pro not long before. At the time that I kind of got the 4th and 5th chapters going. And
I think you and I both had the look in the headlights like, what in the world are we doing?
When am I going to make some money?
Yeah,
it was part of my
little anxiety ridden on the outside.
Yeah. Well, we're providers, and so I think let's go to before we unfold all the different, because you've got 5 different programs or 7 just within the Kingdom Way tent. Let's talk about the roots of it. Where you came up with a name. You left a pastoring role in some capacity, and I'm imagining it was to pursue this mission vision in some way.
Yeah, no,
I have no idea.
I appreciate you asking the question, and I love talking about it. It's been quite a journey, and as I share the story, I think it provides maybe inspiration for people that may be stuck in a vocation or just sensing a smoldering discontent in their heart. They know that they're not quite in the right place, but they don't know exactly why.
Yeah.
And that's kind of where I found myself. So as I shared with you, I was a pastor for 20 years, and I didn't think I would find myself doing anything different than that.
Yeah.
I felt a calling even when I was in junior high. I had a camp experience where I just felt God calling me, this is what I want you to do, and I pursued that.
Well, I'm sure he did. But he might not have wanted you to do it forever.
Yeah, exactly. Thankfully, he doesn't give us insight into what all he has for us. Otherwise, we'd probably bail.
Right. Yeah.
But I pastored for 20 years. The first 10 years of that, I was bivocational because I started 2 churches in Kansas City. One church on the west end of Kansas City, one in just about a mile west of KU campus, actually.
Was that right downtown?
Yeah, it was right off of the main, for those who might be familiar with KU town, Cassold, just a mile west from the campus, straight west. And so during those times, as some people that might be listening have started a church here and there or an entrepreneur venture.
Yeah, it's the most entrepreneurial venture, just
Absolutely. You can't make money doing it. You have to do a side gig. And so I was a paralegal in a law firm. I climbed the highest I could at a company that trains insurance licensing training, and I oversaw 100 instructors across the country and just got incredible marketplace experience and leadership.
Yeah.
While I was starting
your network, which probably helped build your church in some ways.
Yeah. And then
was it a cold startup? You weren't sponsored by another church organization, or where did you get your summit?
Yeah.
I want to jump back. Can we jump back already and go back to middle school?
It's your show, dude.
Because where did you come from? And I want to answer some of those questions because it sounds like maybe you weren't really from a deeply faith-invested family before that camp.
No, not at all. I grew up in Wisconsin, kind of a rural area in west central near Eau Claire.
Oh, yeah, big college town right there.
It is, yep. And I grew up in a really a tough, difficult environment, as I'm sure a lot of people are listening have. I grew up with a pretty severe alcoholic father, and created a lot of pain, physical, emotional abuse, and really just constant challenges. And
you and siblings too?
Yeah, I was the oldest of 2 other brothers, and so it was a really tough situation. We were very, I would say, religious, going to mainline denominational church that my dad was a part of. And then we just stopped going all together when he started drinking heavily. And so I was about 10 years old, and I had a friend of mine invite me to a small country church near where I grew up. And I heard a message that I was captivated by, and it's totally changed my life. And it was through this wordless book it was called, that's just colors. And it was a vacation Bible school program. And the speaker was sharing this wordless book, and he started with this black page of how that the Bible and God says that we all have defaults in our systems, and it's a thing called sin. We're all imperfect people, and there's a consequence for that. Then he shared, but Jesus loved us so much, and God became flesh. We're celebrating that in this Christmas season, and he loved us so much that he paid the ransom for our sin by dying in our place on the cross, was buried and rose again from the dead. And that if we believed in that and we invited Christ to be the forgiver and leader of our lives, that the white page would cleanse us as white as snow and just give us a clean slate, a new purpose. And then, talked about the gold page, that not only a new purpose here and now, but assurance of eternal life to come. And then the green page, just some, hey, if you're interested in this, these are some ways you grow.
Oh, wow.
Very simple.
Wow.
But it captivated me. And quite honestly, that night I was laying in bed and I remember thinking about it, and I was scared. I didn't want to go to hell.
Right.
I kind of like prayed a prayer in my own words, and immediately I sensed a difference in my life. I sensed that there was someone else living inside of me. And I know it might sound weird to some of your listeners, but it was transforming. Yeah. And I became, what Bible calls as a new creature in Christ. And I had someone then, and this is where I started learning, it wasn't just about the eternal future, but here and now, where I remember kneeling beside my bed and just crying out to God, and I felt his comfort and his presence in my life.
It's kind of like, if this, then what kind of a moment. I wanted to go back a little bit. Like, was your mom around too?
Yeah, she was.
And was there? Was your dad like always a drinker, and then he just slowly worked into alcoholism, or was there a defining moment that really created a change in him?
Yeah, I think a couple things. One is he always had a dream of building his own house. He was an amazing, masterful carpenter, and so he built our whole house pretty much from scratch. He outsourced just a few things, but. And so the stress of that, plus working, being laid off, and just not knowing where to turn, then, as you and I know, we become the sum of the 5 people we hang around the most.
Right.
That quote,
Yeah, the other unemployed guys are hanging out down at the tavern, and so that's where I'm at.
Yeah, and so he started hanging out with some of the guys at the tavern. He hung out with a guy who was a World War II vet, and come to find out later, I didn't know this till later, but my dad was... actually hid it from everybody, but ended up going into Vietnam, and that didn't come out until 17 years later in his marriage. Wow. And no one knew about it.
Some trauma there, probably.
And so he found in this World War II vet a comrade,
right? And
he was a heavy drinker,
right?
And so that just and he became a heavy drinker pretty much overnight, in my memory.
Which is a shame, because, like, at least part of that reason is probably because he kept all that bottled up. If he could have just felt comfortable to share what he was struggling with your mom, with a friend, somebody from church,
Absolutely,
it would have been so much healthier.
Well, as you and I know, I mean, what you do in your groups, what I do in my groups, a CEO, a business owner, a manager, or what have you, you can't divorce your personal life from your professional life. Yeah. And in the environments we're trying to provide people to have that place where they can share anything and everything is so vital to their survival and working through. All of us have baggage.
Yeah.
And to be able to have a safe, confidential, collaborative counsel environment to process that would be a game changer for my dad.
I joined the Rotary Club when I was still relatively young. Now I'm kind of like in the sweet spot for joining Rotary, but at the time I was still in my 30s and I'm banking, and I remember going to a couple of events and being like, oh, well, these community leader type responsible people, they like to party too. And that's not anything other than an observation that people have lots of different pursuits and interests and challenges, and we got somebody knocking at the door. I'll go get that. I got some new swag.
Yeah, right.
It's swag season at LoCo Think Tank. We've got, as I was sharing with you, we've got a new brand coming out, but our listeners cannot see anything yet. So
mum's the word, man.
Mum's the word. So where did we leave off? We really left off with, if this, then what, right? Like a kind of a shift in your person, and really a decrease of that probably loneliness that you felt as being the oldest and most responsible brother, and starting to turn into a man. How old, when you were 10, how old were your little brothers?
So I had a brother that would have been 8 or 9, because he was about a year and a half younger than me, and then one that was just born.
Oh wow.
10 years younger.
Oh wow. We had a oops baby in my family too. Maybe that's not the case in yours. I shouldn't make assumptions. So like, talk to me about what changed in your life even right away.
Yeah, well, like I said, there was a notable difference. I felt like a new person, and I knew that the presence of God and his person was with me all the time. I just sensed that. And so I started going to church a lot just to learn more. And eventually my mom and my brother started coming, and they had similar experiences and gave their lives to the Lord, which made a huge difference in our family over time. But then we didn't have a lot of money, but I really wanted to go to camp. And so we found a camp through my church, and this kind of leads to the experience where I first got my sense of being a pastor. I had to memorize 250 Bible verses to go for free.
Okay.
So I did that one year, and then the next year did another 250.
Wow. And
I got one of my first Bibles for memorizing 500 verses of Scripture, the little New Testament Bibles.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, and it was one of those at camp, someone was speaking, and I just remember just a fire burning in my heart of a sense of the Lord speaking to my heart, not audibly, but it's like, just how I have helped you in all of these things in your life, I want you to help others.
Yeah. And what he's doing was kind of an example of what you could be doing.
Exactly. And at that time, I really had a heart for, I was kind of forced to go to some Al-Anon meetings and different therapy things, and you start meeting.
So it was public that your dad was struggling with his alcohol by a little later there?
Oh, absolutely. As a matter of fact, he ended up in prison 2 different times.
Oh, wow.
Because of just related offenses. Like one time he had way too much. He's deceased now, so he's looking down from heaven hearing these stories and glad that he's there.
Yeah.
But he had way too much to drink, and he was just, we lived out in the country, and there he went out with a shotgun and started shooting down at the neighbors, even though it would have never reached him. And you start
just making a ruckus. Yeah.
When you start mixing alcohol and firearms,
never a good combination.
You get in trouble really quick.
Yeah. Yeah, that's pretty serious. So, what kind of a student were you, and were you into sports, and what was that kind of middle school into high school kind of season like, and how big was this was a town outside of Eau Claire, is that right?
Yeah, it's called Elk Mound, and it was maybe the high school probably had 400 students total, 500, so not big at all. I was a pretty athletic person, but we had amazing athletes in my particular grade, and so I played sports, but I wasn't really into that. I started working early. Like I said, we didn't have a lot, so I started working on a farm when I was 13, and in rural Wisconsin, so
like
did that.
Mucking dairy cows or
shoveling, what? And dairy cows. They had 150 cows that milk twice a day, stuff like that.
Probably making hay and different things too.
Yeah, and just doing all that stuff.
That was probably I'm a farm kid, as you know, but I have to think that was a pretty formative time, and just seeing the world work in a different way than what you can experience in the city.
I worked hard. I learned how to work hard, and I was privileged to have a boss who I'm still connected with today, 40 years later.
That's
almost,
cool.
That was number one. He was a Christian. He wasn't perfect by any means, but he just took me under his wing and gave me an opportunity, taught me how to work hard. It was a person of character.
Probably saw a little void in your life in that capacity,
And so ironically now, especially this time of year, we do kind of year-end giving campaigns for the nonprofit side, and he still is a significant supporter because he just loves what we're doing.
That's awesome. So, lead me off to school, I guess, or did you go to college right away?
Yeah, I went to college. Like I said, I knew the trajectory I was going, so I found a Bible college. I had a pastor that kind of took me under his wing when I was a teenager that really had an influence in my life, and he had gone there, so I went to it. It was Calvary Theological Seminary in Kansas City. That's how I ended up there.
Yep.
So that's where I went to school, and that's where I stayed kind of my first 10 years, starting those 2 churches I mentioned.
Yeah. So talk to me about those churches. Were they co-branded? And like you said, it was kind of from scratch here.
Yeah, so the first one was a denominational entity, and I joined another pastor so I didn't start it cold from scratch. But they probably had 60 people or something, and it went to 500 people in just a couple of years. Yeah. Just exploded.
And do you share the denomination?
Yeah, it was an evangelical free denomination. Okay. So like Faith Church here.
Yeah, Faithy Free over there.
Yep, same denomination.
Okay.
And then it grew so fast, so quick. It kind of really changed in terms of my fit. And about that time, I had a couple other pastors that I'd known of from school a little bit that was starting a church, and it was more of a hot start. It was a bigger church in the area, and they took like 200 people from that church.
Oh, wow.
And planted one across the city.
Right.
And so I was a part of that, and that was a lot of fun too.
Yeah, and grew that 200 into 500 or 800 again, or whatever.
Yeah, got up to almost 800, and then by the time I helped them kind of do their giving campaigns to buy 20 acres of land, help.
Oh, like a capital campaign to build a new building.
Kind of help lead the charge on some of that, and then.
And what was that? A team of like 3, 4?
Three full-time pastors.
Okay.
And that was a great way to do it.
Yeah.
We had as I look back, all the team settings I've been involved in, that was probably the most fun team situation I've ever been in, because everybody had different gifts. Everybody celebrated each other's gifts.
Yep.
And leaned into it, and we just had fun.
And can you share who those guys were and what their giftings were and yours?
Yeah, so there was one. So at the time, I was pretty young. I mean,
you're 22 or something.
Yeah,
I suppose,
I was.
Maybe.
I don't remember. Yeah, mid-20s, upper 20s. Yeah, mid-20s. And so one of the pastors was really good. He was the teaching pastor. I still spoke, but I wasn't the main communicator.
Yep.
And the other guy was really kind of systems and structure behind the scenes, running a lot of the details. Operations,
yep.
And then I was kind of a face guy. I did worship. I did young adults ministry. I was a team builder.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so
that people wanted to be around. You were kind of the attractant that kind of brought people around that sometimes were part of it.
I didn't know what I was doing a lot of times.
Yeah, same.
But I could attract people. I could find people and their gifts and find them a slot, and people just loved being in a team.
We share that in common so much. I was just telling the story today of when I left Bank of Colorado in Windsor to go to Bank of Colorado in Colorado Springs because they had acquired some banks down there. And my boss, Tom Prenger, if you're listening, Tom said something along the lines of, you're not that experienced yet, and you're not the most productive banker, but everybody sure likes working with you around here, so we're gonna miss you.
I tell you that's a valuable commodity.
For sure. If people could have a more enjoyable workplace environment just because of that ingredient, and I'm not saying that we're all that, we're as annoying and full of sin as anybody else is, but it is the way we're wired, kind of.
Yeah.
And why we've been able to do what we've done in some ways.
Well, and even in this season of my life, and you probably talk to the people you coach too a lot, that when they're trying to think of finding the right hires, competence is huge, character is huge, but we often underestimate chemistry. Mm-hmm. And if you don't have chemistry, it can be a miserable experience.
Yeah.
And I'm hard pressed sometimes to decide which is I think character obviously is most important. But if you get someone that's great chemistry, but maybe not the best in competence, you still live with that. Mm-hmm. You get a high competent person, and then someone doesn't have chemistry and causing a lot of emotional toil in the culture. That's a big problem.
Well, and that's clutch in these kind of small groups that you and I both build and things like that. We should probably zero in on that at some point here as well. Yeah, for sure. Just kind of contrasting and comparing because, for two people that do as much of similar things as we both do, we've had an abundant stance toward each other's efforts, I think, the whole time.
Absolutely. I think it'd be fun to talk about because I respect you a lot, man, and that's part of what I've grown a lot in is like there is ample opportunity out there. I know if I could bless you like you're blessing me by being a part of this program is that everyone wins.
Yeah. I like to joke at LoCo Think Tank, we look for the win-win-win-win, but we'll settle for the win-win-win if necessary.
Yeah.
So I guess let's come into the next phase of your journey. What was that leading up to? No, you must have had a chapter or two yet before you moved to Colorado.
It's interesting how things have worked out. It's been kind of 10-year segments, like 10 years of I was working in the marketplace, starting a couple churches, 10 years lead pastor, and it's almost been 10 years now. with Kingdom Way.
Yeah, are you getting ready to do something totally different?
Yeah, that mum's the word on that.
Okay.
No, not totally different, but I think some new things coming that's going
You've got some
to
growth
be
and change going on.
explosive. Yeah, that
Awesome.
I'm really excited about. That I can't talk a lot about yet, but stay tuned.
All right, sounds good. So lead pastor.
Yeah, so I was in
What?
Western Nebraska.
Oh.
Sorry, in a non-denominational church.
Western
and,
Nebraska, like
Yeah.
Alliance or something? Or
Scotts Bluff.
Scotts Bluff. You know, as far as towns in Nebraska go, that's a pretty darn nice town.
That's a perfect way of saying it because I never thought I'd end up in Nebraska. But if there was anywhere that I'd like to live in Nebraska, Scotts Bluff was the place. 'Cause
You know,
it's cool.
Probably a lot of people have, outside of the Colorado Front Range, most people have been to Scotts Bluff. But if there's listeners around the country, most of them haven't.
Yeah.
Because it's not really on the way to anywhere. Describe Scotts Bluff to somebody that's never heard of it before.
Well, it's a destination place. It's interesting because on top of the bluff, so it's actually part of, because a lot of your listeners, I know, it's part of the value program too, of providing history of cultural things around here, right?
Yeah.
So that was right where the Oregon Trail went through.
All right.
And so there's some historic, a little monument national park there, and then you can go to the top of the bluff. You could actually drive and then walk around on top of it, and I did that a lot. And there was people from around the world.
Yeah.
That you'd hear
That's
different.
pretty cool.
You'd hear different languages up there because they want to go to
Right.
see it.
Which makes it a different part of Nebraska because most of the rest of Nebraska is pretty much white
Boring.
bread every time.
Sorry. I hope I didn't offend anybody with that, but
There's some awesome places. Actually, I love like the Valentine, Cherry County region up there.
it's got its
pretty
own
cool.
beauty.
Yeah, yeah.
But it's kind of like so I got my wife is from Bermuda, and so
Oh, really? Okay.
one of her uncles has come to the U.S. to go to like dude ranches.
All right.
Because he loves riding horse, and it's like this epic experience. So if you want an epic experience, kind of a Western dude ranch type of feel, go to Western Nebraska and Scotts Bluff.
And Scotts Bluff is what, 10 or 20,000 people? 30?
It's a little bigger than that. It's been a while, man, but I think with Scotts Bluff and Gearing, it's probably 35, 40 together.
Okay. Yeah. Which is a very respectable town size.
Yeah.
That's what Longmont was when we moved here, at least.
Yeah.
So, non-denominational church. This one wasn't a plant. You already had a pretty large congregation, and they did a big search or something, or you met somebody who knew somebody, and they said, "Oh."
So actually, this is one of the cool parts of the story. So I've got this guy that I've affectionately labeled as Shep, which stands for shepherd. He's been
Okay.
my pastor, I would say, for over 40 years. The same guy in Wisconsin. We kept in touch, and I'd call him for counsel, and I kind of hit a tight spot, and I'd call him. We stayed connected, and he was looking for someone to be the associate pastor and then transition to become the lead pastor.
Mm.
And
he was the lead pastor.
he was,
already?
yeah.
Okay.
And so he asked me, and we went through that process and transition and became the lead pastor. He became my associate pastor.
Oh wow, that's an interesting.
Yep.
Talk to me about like what that training kind of looks like. Like what I'm sure there's different things based on giftings in different churches, but what does a lead? Is that like a CEO basically, or the president of an organization, or is it more?
Yeah.
I mean, not that we can compare it to business and church or whatever, but
I think, I would say it's like in some ways, a CEO that has very high compassion, care for people. Not all CEOs have that. Some do, some don't. But here's one of the reasons why I'm doing what I'm doing now is because most pastors never get any training of what it takes to lead a sizable organization. I think it wasn't a huge church, but we got up to maybe 500 or over and had 15 staff.
right.
So you think about that.
Yeah.
Running a company of 15 people, that's a challenge.
Right.
So think about running a church with 15 staff people with
Well,
everybody being your boss.
Well, and 25 volunteers.
Exactly.
Right. That's a big part of the labor force in a church a lot of times.
Oh, absolutely. So that's what kind of started me down the trajectory that I'm really on now is I had a bent for leadership and I think a gifting in it, but I'd never been taught.
Yeah.
So in 2006, I started going to some different sizable leadership conferences. I spent some time with coaches, just trying to eat up whatever I could. And then some of my best mentors, I read a lot. And so I just started reading a lot.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
then all of a sudden I started being asked to speak and train other pastors, and I'm doing conferences in Ghana and Liberia
Wow.
and Trinidad and Tobago, and over the period of 6-7 years, and the things that I was learning, and I didn't know this at the time, Kurt, but I probably the last 5 years of pastoring there, I really came to realize some new things about myself, that I had this entrepreneur bent to me.
Yeah.
That I never fully realized and owned, and that was one of the reasons why I started feeling a smoldering discontent there, because I couldn't do new things.
Right. You were hired to be the stable transition to the next stable transition to the next stable transition.
Yeah, and moving from a
ways.
situation where you're starting churches like, let's try this today. Well, it didn't work. Let's try something else.
Right.
To a place that had been established for 20 years.
Right. Well, and people are baked into their patterns and in their wheel tracks, to use an Oregon Trail reference, and you start coming and being like,
great word picture, man. Yeah. So that was hard, and but the other thing I started realizing, I know, because you'll probably be asking this too, is how did I start thinking about something different? Well, for every year I would pray on my vacation and just, God, what do you have for me? Try to get clarity in the next year, and every year I felt this, that I call it kind of the prompting of the Spirit, and the Spirit's whisper saying, Dan, do everything that I've called you to do here with full-hearted gusto, but just be prepared because something else is coming. And for 3 years, I sensed that every year. And then the other thing, I started doing a lot of thinking about, God, how can we have a deeper impact in my community? I helped start an organization called Valley Evangelical Pastors Fellowship, which is comprised of 25 churches. And I think the sole focus of that was to try to find the things we couldn't do on our own that we could do together.
Cool. And that's like all the Scotts-Bluff-Gehring regional churches, kind of?
Yep. Anyone that had similar, even close-minded, it didn't have to be a
right. If they were snake handling, you maybe weren't seeking them out, kind of thing.
Exactly. But that was really cool and a great leadership experience. And we started this thing, a nonprofit called Love in Action.
When I started my food trucking business, I tried to start a food truckers association for the same kind of reasoning, that I wanted that group to be able to learn from each other. And I was like, don't go someplace and cater for $13 a plate, get $18.20, because that's what caterers charge. Come on, you're ruining my opportunity here. But anyway, we have that desire to mobilize and so
congregate. That was part of my discovery of these gifts that I had that was kind of laying dormant, of being able to collect people together and I've always been this kind of, I call a reluctant Moses, where God gives me these things, and I was like, man, there's got to be someone else better for that.
Right.
And I can't do that. But he just kept pushing me, and I said, okay, well, I'll do my best. And it was just cool to see what got to happen there. But as I was trying to pray through a period of 9 months of doing some fasting and prayer on and off, I said, God, there's got to be more things we can do to impact this community and beyond. And I had really a global vision. And I'd been invited to speak for a conference in Liberia with 3,000 pastors around that time. Wow. And some pretty cool stories there too, if we get into it. But anyway, I realized.
Did you stay humble through all that? Because I know sometimes my head gets kind of big when people start heaping praise on me and thinking I'm extra smart.
I think I've been doing okay so far, but you never know. That's why you have to have good people in your life to challenge you. But
fair.
So this is what happened, is and the way I share it with people is I realized I was committing pastoral malpractice.
That sounds exciting.
And what I mean by that is, even now when I had the chance to talk to pastors, I ask them, what is your one job description that's unique to you that no other person of faith has? And usually they can't answer the question. But it comes from Ephesians 4, where it says that the pastor's job is to equip the saints for the work of the ministry, not to do it all themselves, but to find the gifts and talents and train up other people to do the work.
By the way, I just had a thought, I might as well share it. How many of those 500 verses that you memorized back in middle school do you still have at hand?
A lot of them. Maybe not verbatim, but I got the concepts and close to the chapter and verse.
That's fair. That's fair.
But through that season of praying and fasting and all these things I was learning, what the pastoral malpractice part is that we were doing a lot of great things and community impact. I had a lot of freedom to be involved in the community, but I realized that I was missing the boat. If I was trying to get people to be more devoted followers, I was missing the boat on 60% of their waking hours of their life. By not doing hardly anything to equip them in their workplaces.
On that Monday morning.
The Monday morning, yeah.
Yeah.
And I read some things like a book called The Monday Morning Atheist.
Oh, okay.
And the concept was how many people say they're believers, but really when it comes to Monday, they live like atheists.
Yeah.
And I met the CEO. We're partners with him now.
Oh, wow.
And he spent some time with me on the phone and some calls, and he really challenged me. And I started using some of his materials, and I started a group. This group in Scotts Bluff turned into 15 business owners.
Oh, wow.
I wasn't even targeting business owners. We had you might have seen in Cheyenne, if you've driven past there, or Rapid City, it's called
Floyd's Trucks?
Floyd's Trucks, yeah.
I know Michael Gillum. I actually.
Yeah, so his dad, Mark, was in this group.
Awesome.
And then we had the executive director of Chamber of Commerce there. Well, she wasn't in that group, but she was involved in a lot of things we did. The HR director of the hospital, just all these amazing people. And it's like, okay, Lord, I wasn't expecting this. We met every week for 5 years.
Wow.
That group's still going on today.
Wow.
And that was part of this, like,
every week.
Every week.
For an hour?
Yeah, we'd meet 6:30 to 7:38.
Wow.
But the transformation I experienced from those guys investing in me and me investing in them was unbelievable. And then we started doing a monthly thing we called Common Pursuit, which is, you're familiar with that name.
Yep.
And then an annual leadership conference for pastors and leaders, or pastors and business leaders.
Yeah.
And it just started exploding. And so I wasn't looking for this, but I looked online and I found this place in Fort Collins called Kingdom Way Companies.
Oh.
And it was a guy. I'll let you, if you want to get into the full story of that, we can. But anyway,
sounds pretty intriguing.
Yeah, it is intriguing.
Oh, wait, before you do that, let's come back to that.
Okay.
Because you mentioned a wife from Bermuda, and she was already tagging along with you here. Where did you pick her up along this
we
journey?
met in Bible college, man.
Way back when. Okay.
They called it Calvary Bridal College.
Was she a student there as well?
She was, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, she was studying education and wanted to become a teacher. So
we'll learn more about her in the family segment, but can you share her name?
Ilona. Yep.
I remember I always struggle with it, so thank you.
Yeah.
Hi, Ilona. I think you're great, by the way.
Yeah, she is awesome. Been married for 31 years.
And so let's jump back to that Kingdom Way Companies. So you found out this company in Fort Collins, Kingdom Way Companies, and I think I've heard a bit of this story before, but if you can take us through in 3 or 4 minutes, I think it's worthy.
Absolutely. So I called them because I said, man, I'm drowning here. There's credible opportunity and I don't know what to do with it. And so Jim's story, I'll try to be really brief on this. Jim Dismore was his name. A lot of people who have been to Fort Collins would recognize the name.
Was he a banker or something?
He ran Ultimate Support Systems, which is now Heritage Christian School.
Is that right?
Yep. He sold that building. So 2008 and 2009, he had a really rough end.
I used to play basketball at Heritage Christian.
Is that right?
Yeah.
And so he had to kind of close up his end of the business, and he sold but he's always.
But he was one of the business leaders and founders from around here that a lot of the talent that after Ultimate Support was gone filtered into other organizations and only made them stronger.
Absolutely.
For what it's worth. So, hey, Jim, we don't know each other, but I got
and there's a lot of leaders I could mention right now that know Jim, that Jim has an indelible impact on them.
Yeah.
That have very successful businesses and careers and ministries.
I would not be surprised at all.
Yeah. And so I called him up. He was very gracious. I came down and he became a really good friend and a mentor of mine. And he'd come up to Scotts Bluff and spend some time with me. And And then he did some workshops with me in Scottsbluff. Then so his story real quick is he was one of the original Walmart executives.
Oh, wow.
He had been hired by Sam Walton when there was only 3 Walmarts.
Wow.
And he started over 1,000 Walmarts across the country,
Okay.
into China even. So he was a believer. His story is that he was a believer that whole time, but not really bridging that Sunday to Monday gap.
Yeah.
And so he's opening a 3-story store in China with 250 some checkout lanes.
Oh, God.
And people, and God just got a hold of his heart and said, Jim, what are you doing this for? What eternal value does all this have?
Right.
And that ultimately led him to leaving. And he wanted to find a business that he could make it a ministry first, but a viable products and services. And that's what Ultimate Support was.
Really?
And I don't remember, but he grew it to almost 300 employees, if I'm getting that close.
It seems pretty
close.
Similar, yeah.
But he had created this culture that it was a ministry, and a lot of people were impacted. He gave a lot of, matter of fact, he wouldn't like me saying this, but Jim, if you're listening, I'm doing it because you need to be honored. He gave $75 million away in his lifetime.
Wow.
And so much so, he was one of these guys, generous to a fault, that, when things went sour kind of with the 2008 and 9 crisis and other things that I won't share here, but that happened,
In some ways he gave too much.
He did.
Yeah.
He did.
Well, and you have to be a steward of yourself sometimes too.
But I think
God bless you, Jim.
He'll have amazing eternal rewards. So we're still good friends and keep in contact. But anyways, the story, that's how it started, and he had been looking for and interviewed people across the country to kind of turn the mantle over to,
because he had started this Kingdom Way company.
Yeah, I'm sorry. So he developed this seminar called 5 Principles Doing Business God's Way.
Oh, okay.
And he did it 50-60% of his time around the world.
Oh, wow.
And so he developed these tools and kind of a framework. And then when I met him, he had just started kind of dabbling a little bit into, so he had worked with an organization called FCCI, Fellowship Companies for Christ International, and was on their national board. And that time, 20 years, 15 years ago, they had groups up and down the Front Range here. And he was really involved with that. But then when I met him, he wasn't doing much with that, but started dabbling with kind of half-day coaching, consulting groups. He did a lot of consulting on the side through Kingdom Way companies, but then started the nonprofit side. And so when you said I'm founder, really I was in the sense of Kingdom Way Ministries.
Yeah.
Because we changed and we added a lot of dynamics to it, but kept some of the similar concepts.
Yeah.
And have been dormant, not doing anything for 5 years.
I see.
Or more. So.
And you guys got connected, and it was like I can breathe fresh life into this brand, and that'll feed the entrepreneurial itch that I've got going, and be part of the legacy that Jim was trying to create too, right?
Absolutely.
I assume he was toward the later part of his career by that time, and when you're whatever age, you don't necessarily want to work that hard anymore or have the juice to do it if you wanted to.
Yeah, well, and he had taught a lot of people, and he made billions of dollars for people he consulted with. He consulted with companies across the country, and he just added a lot of value to people. I forgot what we're talking about.
Well, just how that opportunity unfolded and why, like you were that transition step and how that.
Yeah. So, that's what I was going to say is so any consultant or coach worth his weight in gold is going to try to help people think about succession strategies, right?
Right.
And how many people do we know that never get there?
Yeah. And
the 5th level leader, finding that person. And so he had never found that. He had interviewed 20 people across the country over the years.
Wow. He'd been looking and just didn't really find
that. Yeah, and I wasn't looking to do that, and he didn't think I was the guy either. But we became friends for 4 or 5 years, and he finally said, in those 3 years, I sensing something. He said, Dan, I think you're the guy to do this. And so by then, he didn't have a dime to pay me.
Right.
But at least
you can adopt my expensive baby if you want her.
Exactly. So it was a calling for sure, because we came down and, like I said, 10 years ago, this summer, it'll be 10 years.
Wow.
We lived in his
Was that a big leap of faith for you and your wife and your family too, right?
I had twin boys that were in junior high at the time.
Wow.
A daughter that was 3 or 5, something like that.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so we first 3 months we didn't know how we're gonna. I didn't even know. I didn't have a strategy. I just knew God was calling us, and,
Right.
and we lived in his basement as a whole family for
And
3 months.
circa me this. When was this?
2013,
2013. Okay.
summer of 2013.
So when did we meet? 2015, 2016?
Somewhere around
maybe?
there, yeah.
Yeah, a couple years later.
Mm-hmm.
So, okay. And so the economy was recovering from the whole recessionary things and stuff like that. And here we are.
Yeah.
What did you think of Fort Collins when you got here?
Oh,
You've
man.
probably been here visiting him and stuff.
I had, and my wife and I come down here on occasion for a little getaway. It's only 2.5, 3 hour drive.
Mm-hmm.
Just loved it here, and never dreamed that we'd live here.
Dream come true.
Amen.
Except for the whole no income, no prospects for immediate income thing.
I gotta admit, it was hard. It was hard to enjoy some of the sceneries most days. You know what that's like.
For sure. Head down. And so, we can maybe talk a little bit through some of the growth and change in Kingdom Way, and maybe even some of the, I tried this, it didn't really work. And one of my recollections from that first meeting with you and I is you had these amazing materials and folders, and they were really nice, and all these different things and stuff. And I had like a one-page Google or a Word document for my application, no structure, but I had 3 groups and you had one. And you were
That's funny.
Why do I have all these? I was like, I don't know. I'm just doing my thing.
So we both have a little envy of each other. You admire my materials, and I'm admiring what you're doing, man.
Well, for sure. I've been, when I go to your events and various things, and I see you've got 300, 400, 500 people in a room and stuff, and I've tried to do some big events, and it's not my jam. But so different talents, and yes, I've actually envied your brand and all that stuff really well. It's not mine. It's not. I don't want it, but
Yeah.
vice versa probably too.
Yeah. No, that's good, man.
So take me through that. What were some of the first efforts to try to get revenue ultimately, because you got a nonprofit and a for-profit. Is that true, or it was kind of?
It was for Jim. It was a for-profit and a nonprofit.
His consultancy was a for-profit.
Yep. And so I came on board as solely on the nonprofit side, and I said, I have some things and ideas I'd like to do with not just business owners but pastors. And so we rebranded it Kingdom Way Ministries, and kind of I kept a lot, like some of the fancy materials. Those were Jim's.
They were left over from Jim.
Yeah. So I was just leveraging that.
He had a big print run, and whatever.
Exactly. And like I said, he funded a lot of the ministry side of things out of his company proceeds.
Right.
And so when we started, I didn't like you, man. It's like, I got a dream. I think this is what I need to do. There's a need. I know how to do it. But we started, I actually, the first 3 years, we found a few people. He introduced me to a lot of them. I knew 1 or 2 of them. And we did a half day. We called them Kingdom Leadership Councils then.
Okay.
And I created...
That'd be kind of the mastermind kind of thing that's similar to what we do, or
yeah,
no?
Absolutely. But it was probably a little bit more, as I look back on it, a little bit more content driven.
Right. Yep.
And but that's what I knew, and I thought I could add value to. It's really trying to bring the spiritual, personal development along the path, professional development.
Mm-hmm.
And so I just try to stay a month ahead. I asked people to sign up for 10 months because I needed a couple months breather for year-end things. And I created, it turned out 30 modules of curriculum.
Oh, wow.
With video suites, with tools, and they're all online now.
And is this you just kind of distilling a lot of the different leadership books and seminars?
Curated a lot of my own stuff.
Yeah.
But the first part was a focus on a different Bible character. And what are the life and leadership lessons that we learned from that? And it was a very kind of in-depth study, as well as a scripture reading where they did 5 days a week where they'd read about that. Yeah. And then the leadership development, business development side would dovetail into some of those common themes.
Right.
And I got different people that would do a video, and so Richard Fagerlin, a lot of people would know him. He came and shared with us.
He was on the podcast recently.
Yep. And so he came and talked about trustology one time, and then had the CEO of JBS Chicken Side. What's it called now?
Tyson?
Yeah, well, it wasn't Tyson. It was anyway. He was a
Pilgrim's Pride.
Pilgrim's Pride. Yes,
Yeah.
thank you. So the CEO I'd met, I was speaking at Life Point Church for the pastor when he was on sabbatical.
Yeah.
And I met this guy named Bill Lovett, and he
I think I might have came to that one because he's been a speaker for one of your big events.
He was one of our speakers,
Yeah.
and so he did a couple videos with us. And so this guy inherited Pilgrims in a bankruptcy situation and turned it into $8 billion in 5 years.
Nice job.
So these were the kind of people God was bringing me to contribute to these modules.
Right. And you're just like asking them, hey, would you be willing to spend a couple hours like working on these modules and some scripting and stuff with me or whatever? And they're like, sure, sounds good.
And I got a guy,
That's
we
great.
had really quality video guy, the young guy that was in college trying to get it going. And so he gave us a great deal. And so we still have all that. And, what I learned from that experience was several things. At the end of that, I went back to everyone. Everyone would re-up for another year. And I went back to everyone, had coffee one-on-one. I said, what was it kept you coming back? And, it's not what a curator or a creative wants to hear, but it wasn't the content.
Right.
And so I learned a lot from that experience. One is I got burnt out on doing that.
Right.
And so I tried to be smarter and tap into other people's content and create the connection, which that's what I heard from those people who were part of that first group is number one, every month I lose my way and I need to recalibrate my compass to true north every month. And I lose track of what matters most in terms of my faith too. And like you, I'm experiencing this over and over again, I'm sure with the people who are in your groups, is it's so easy for leaders to exist in isolation.
Yeah.
They feel the weight and the loneliness. And it was just like, wow, I got a group that understands my world.
Yeah.
And then I can vent on that I know will support me, and then I get ideas and counsel from.
Yeah.
So those were the good things, and we learned from that. And I wasn't seeking to, it's kind of one of these things that I didn't have a grandiose vision of what the end, start with the end in mind.
And if we circle back to that group that you met with weekly, that was kind of what that was providing in your life. It wasn't necessarily super content driven; it was relational driven.
Yeah, very much. And I didn't, we don't know what we don't know.
Right.
And you get in a room with people that are better than you in different things. It's like, wow, I didn't know that.
Right. Well, we all live in our own little tunnels,
Yeah.
And I cut you off there. I don't know.
No, I was just going to say I didn't seek to be an event organization, and I still wouldn't describe ourselves as that.
Yeah.
But I think it was probably 5 years ago this fall, maybe 6. I've never felt like I've had a clear, big vision of the total end in mind. I've gotten this vision of the next year, 2 years, 3 years, and I just try to run to that.
Yeah.
And so I thought, man, there's a need for an environment, like an FCA, which Fellowship of Christian Athletes, where you get someone with a common affinity in athleticism or sports. And then you get together in environments to figure out how to bring Christ into this.
Yeah.
And it's like, there's nothing like that here. And I just felt the Lord saying, Dan, you need to do this.
There should be. I was just thinking there's a publication actually that's based here in Fort Collins. I've met the folks of the Christian Business Directory.
Yep.
Like, it's a shame that they didn't have like at least a once quarterly conference. They've got hundreds and hundreds of advertisers.
Don't give them any ideas now, Kurt.
Okay, they probably aren't listening. But it's abundance anyway, right?
Absolutely.
But I mean, you really did fill that void outside of, businessmen might have known the business people that are in their church and had some affinity and stuff, but helping to understand there's a network of people that are trying to use those principles in their workplace and to, frankly, to encourage them to do so.
Yeah,
so they're not Monday morning atheists.
It was exactly. So it was a simple thing. We wanted to try to create. So our first event, I think we had 30 people. And then the next one was 50, the next one 70, and it just, like you said, it just kind of mushroomed until COVID. And now we're trying to
work your way back.
We're getting back, yeah. But
you had 150 or 200 at that one this fall, I think.
Yeah, 175 this last time, and then we just branched out into Denver too. So we had about 250 with both venues.
Oh, good.
We did 2 events the same day. And so, but we were trying to provide an environment where high inspiration, high connection with, so it's been cool, just like in the environments you're providing, to hear the connections that are happening that we can't even plan or think about. Yeah. People giving business to this person and that person. It's just so cool to hear that. I love hearing those stories. But then also to help them walk away with, hey, these are some leadership principles or paradigm shifts even that they can incorporate in their life and their business, even if it's just one thing,
Right. Yeah.
And then hopefully to provide enough value there where for those that are interested in a next step experience that they'll explore that.
So I feel like it's a good time now to kind of explore the breadth of different kind of things. You've got Common Pursuit. You've got these big events, which are called, what are those called?
Yeah, so the big events we do 3-4 times a year is Common Pursuit.
Oh, that's Common Pursuit. Yep. Okay.
And so this might be a little confusing, but I just found, if nothing else, it helps me. But trying to create a different name with the different environments, like you have a kitchen table, you have a living room, you have an entertainment room,
Yeah.
It's like that.
Yeah. No, I think that's good, and that's a great name for that one, right, by the way. And so then the business groups that are kind of once a month kind of a thing, do you have a different name for them?
Yeah, so if you kind of envision the funnel, the bigger events are probably a little bit of our flagship. Come and see what we're about, a magnet, a connector.
Yep.
And then hopefully from there, kind of a next step is we have a monthly luncheon, which I'm going to get you on the docket for 2023, man, for what we call Work-Life Connect.
Yeah.
And that's just
a lunch and learn effectively, right?
Absolutely. Kind of. And, so last month we had 70 people at that.
Nice. Nice. Yeah.
It was fantastic. And Jimmy Page, some people might know Jimmy that's listening, came and spoke, become a really good friend and great communicator, got some great books. And then, so that, what I love about that, Kurt, is one of the things that struggled, you asked if I'm still a pastor, and absolutely.
Right.
So part of my heart is, we have a target audience very similar to yours. But the thing I always wrestled with was like, well, what about the average Joe, that's not necessarily a CEO or executive leader in the workplace? What can we provide them? Because the church is not providing it.
Yeah.
And so the Work-Life Connect is a place for anyone and everybody. We have business owners, we have CEOs, but we also have, it's interesting, we have some people that are solo entrepreneurs. We have some people that are unemployed and they're trying to make connections.
Right.
So we just
key leaders within organizations.
Absolutely. Yeah. So that's what I love about that environment. It's kind of a broad that I feel, if nothing else, it makes me feel a little better.
Right.
But I think we're providing value for those folks.
For sure.
But then the groups, so we have a couple different groups options. We have Businesses Way, we call it, which is very much like your type of groups in LoCo Think Tank, is with business owners, key level executive leaders. They get together for once a month, and we work on every aspect where ours might be a little bit different.
Yeah, you're more content driven again than
a little bit, but I've changed a lot of that.
Fair.
So it's a lot more open ended, but it's faith forward in everything,
right.
and I think that's where
I'm faith sneaky, you're faith forward.
Exactly. And so I just think we're hitting a market and need for certain leaders that's unique, that they really want. And then, but beyond that, one of the things I've learned, Kurt, is I'd love to share this because I know you're not doing this piece in particular, but as you've seen this too, especially through COVID, there was people closed down their business, and it was heart-wrenching for a lot of people and people that I knew in our groups that had to file bankruptcy and all that kind of thing. But what I've seen, and I think you've probably seen this too, is that you can help a person develop strategies, steps, and all of that to become successful. And I was seeing that, not just in people in my groups in the community, but their emotional inner world and their character were not matching the assignment that they've been given. And so they couldn't keep up with that level.
Mm-hmm.
And so a couple of years ago, and this is something that's always been a part of, even when I was pastoring, I started these immersive 1-year experiences for men. Men in the marketplace, we call them Kingdom Way Men. And it's a very
It's kind of more the discipleship almost.
It is. It's a monthly experience, but then we do a retreat, overnight retreat. So we deal with a lot of the baggage things we talked about, spiritual practices. We kind of call them experiential exercises to kind of bridge the head to heart gap.
Yeah.
And then the other thing I found that's really powerful that brings transformation to these men is we have a couples retreat. So we invest in their marriages too, and in their life and in their business.
Yeah.
So that's a powerful combination. So that's been really fun and effective. And we're starting another one of those, hopefully in January. We got 2 of those going now and hope to start a third.
Send me a link if you've got like an info page or something like that. I'll put it in the podcast notes.
Okay, cool. Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that. And then, the last 2 years, I found myself doing a lot of coaching and sometimes kind of counseling.
Yeah, and so that was what I was going to ask, is that 5 capitals,
Yeah.
is that the things that don't fit into the nonprofit tent kind of in some ways
Yes.
go over there, and strategic stuff and whatever?
So this is one of the partners we developed. We've developed a lot of partners through the last 10 years, and 5 Capitals become one of those. And I went through the training certification process with them, and they got a lot of amazing tools that the founders and organizers of those are faith-forward people, but all the tools that they've created is very neutral. But it's based on a lot of my own convictions that I love, but very practical. For example, most of your listeners probably heard of the EOS system and
Sure.
maybe use elements of that.
Yep.
And
Traction. When you were mentioning traction earlier, I was like, do you know traction?
Yeah, exactly. And so they developed a process called the 7 Essentials of Business that has a lot of those types of principles in there for full organizational management and goals and big rocks and all that kind of thing. Right. So there's a lot of tools, and so my point is that I'm coaching 10 individuals right now.
Wow.
Personally.
Oh wow.
And then I've got another person
I wish I had your battery, man. That's one thing I don't have. I probably drink too much alcohol.
That could be part, Kurt. But so that's kind of our vision, is we're building this team of coaches and other facilitators.
Well, you've got a couple of other facilitators now managing groups and helping do a lot of this stuff too.
Yeah, Greg Muehlberger's been an unbelievable
one
colleague, and we've got some others stepping on board in January that's going to go through the training. And
cool.
And so that's one of the things you've done really, really well. So I hope to be like you someday.
Many
Kurt.
hands make light work, man. I don't like to work so hard.
You just like to sit here and sip drinks and talk,
have podcast conversations. Yeah. So what else should people know about Kingdom Way, or how would they maybe want to do a quick commercial? Look me up here.
Yeah, sure.
Come check out this event, anything like that?
Yeah, so we if you go to kingdomwayministries.net, not com.net,
okay.
You can see like right now we have all of our Work Life Connects events that for the next 3 events are up there, and more to come. And the first quarterly big event we call Common Pursuit, as you know.
Yeah.
We don't have up yet, and that's because it's a secret speaker that we're trying to lock in.
Almost there.
Almost there, yeah.
But it's going to be a good one.
It's going to be a good one. So, but they can track with us there, and you could see some of the other things like about our under what we do, the groups and coaching and whatnot there. And then I just encourage people, if you even if you're connected to Kurt in a group, you might find value to one of these events, and you don't have to be involved in anything else. But if we can pour into you,
yeah, or frankly, if you're listening, and you want a little more faith-forward experience, and LoCo Think Tank's getting a little stale, I won't be mad if you want to check out.
Yeah, so you got one of the guys that was in my group.
Oh, is that right? Oh, I didn't know I picked somebody up.
Yeah, no, but he's loving it, and he was in my group with me for I think 4 years.
Right. Well, and sometimes just a change of territory is a nice thing.
And he's in a different position now, and what you're doing is scratching his itch a lot better. So
that's cool.
And he still supports us, and we're still friends, and so it's awesome.
Yeah. I had a good question, and then you threw me off.
Sorry,
dude. Snagged one of yours. I didn't know I did. So I guess that's probably pretty solid. What I was going to say, now I remember it, was that I really came pretty close to joining one of your groups. I had been out of membership with LoCo Think Tank for a couple of years, and I instead made the decision to join a next level group, which is like way out of my league, but that's been really good. But I guess just for listeners, I have a lot of respect for what Dan's put together and the people that have become part of his organization and part of his groups. They're great. So
thank you, brother, and thank you, and I say the same of you.
So we're gonna turn into the closing segments here. Do you need a potty break or anything?
I'm
You're
good,
pretty
bud.
happy?
Yep.
Whiskey break?
Oh.
So faith, family, or politics, where would you like to start? And it's kind of an open season from there, as you know.
Yeah, I'll talk about anything, man. So wherever you want to go, I hold. One of the things I really try to do is I really think the most powerful magnetic leadership is a transparent leadership.
Yeah.
And so, you can ask me anything about any of those, and I'll give you my opinions.
Let's do faith and what kind of habitual sin area is the biggest struggle point for you? Is it gluttony? Is it looking at ladies? Is it greed? Is it sloth?
Oh,
envy?
man.
The LoCo experience is sponsored by InMotion, providing next-day delivery for local businesses. If you need anything delivered in northern Colorado, InMotion's flat fee service is a great resource for your business. Delivering from the Wyoming border to Denver and anywhere in between, their clients range from small breweries to real estate companies. InMotion can deliver almost anything you can imagine. If this fits a need for your business, contact InMotion directly by emailing them at inmotionnoco@gmail.com. That's INMOTIONNOCO@gmail.com, and mention you heard it on the LoCo experience. Sorry, you said I could ask you anything.
No, that's fine.
That's my toughest one right away.
If you would have asked me early college years about ladies, that would have been an issue. But thankfully, God's helped me through that one. I would say the biggest thing is just existing in isolation and in some ways being a hypocrite. And the reason I say that is because, all my life up until starting Kingdom Way 10 years ago, I think I did a pretty good job of making sure I had a few close-knit relationships that I could be real with and, share anything and everything and say, hey, man, I'm struggling with this. Could you ask me about this and that? But, when you move into a brand new community, I was still touting that. I'm still coaching people that. And then I probably 3 years ago, and maybe this is a good thing to say that I hope will be meaningful to people, and I'll be really transparent about this, is I don't think I ever have been a person of huge pride and ego. Like I said, if anything, I struggle with feeling
less than insecure. Maybe not insecure. I feel very secure. Imposter syndrome. I feel sometimes.
Yeah, inadequate.
Yeah.
And it's like, wow, what do I have? What am I doing this? How can I be doing this? And so those are things that I've really worked on in my mind, and a lot better at. But I was not functioning in the communities I was developing. I didn't have that.
You were distant from them, kind of.
I was, I had friends and things like that, but I didn't make myself accountable and transparent to a trusted group like we lead.
Yeah. Well, and that's why, I've been almost coming up on 2 years back in a chapter again, and I like my own medicine.
Yeah. Yep. And so here's what happened, Kurt, and I want to share this because there might be some of your listeners that are feeling this right now, and if they're not, they might be in a season or they coming out of a season where this has happened in their lives. I had a culmination. So just the last couple of years, things have really exploded, and we're in a lot better place in terms of, finances, excitement, momentum. But right before COVID even was a real thing, I had started moving into this dark night of the soul experience that I've never experienced in my life. And it wasn't because that I could detect these areas of hidden sin in my life, and believe me, I was asking those questions like, what am I missing here, Lord? But I did not have true, authentic community with people. And then I had all kinds of these crises, financial crises. The engine blows up in the vehicle, and one of my sons was driving and ran through the garage door 2 different times, and
yeah, right.
The HOA on my butt because I had to.
I dropped my phone and smashed the screen twice in a 6-month period when I could not afford that.
Irritating, right?
A phone to be broken, and
Exactly.
I did it to myself.
And then our furnace and air conditioner go out.
Yeah.
So all these challenges, and
I
plus,
remember that time you kind of had a brave face and a smile, but there was a sense of kind of desperation in your world for a little bit.
For almost a year, and I had some things with some of my sons that happened that was very, very. It just put me in a tailspin, and so that lasted for almost a year, and I tell you,
never shook your faith, I don't think. But.
No, but for the first time in my life since that 10-year-old experience, I felt that God was not there at all. And I've never experienced that in my life.
Right.
And it got so bad, so it had been 2 years ago this past June. I was up, 2 years ago this past June, I took a hike up on Coyote Ridge, and I was so dark that I got to the edge, and I almost threw myself off.
Wow.
And that scared me big time, and my wife didn't know what to do, and I started,
Were you seeing a counselor or anybody? Or
no,
you were still
and
isolating at that time?
That was a type of so then COVID would start hitting, so it was October I started sensing this, and then the fullness of COVID came in February, March, and so that exacerbated everything. And I was thinking, well, it's going to change. It's going to change. And I've had dark times before. I've been criticized. I've come out of it. And I just kept thinking that, something would snap and I'd come out of it, but I wasn't.
Yeah.
And so finally, it was probably 6-7 months into it, I sought out a pastor, started sharing a little bit what was going on, and he was very, very helpful. And then I got involved. I found out through those connections, some people was trying to help me. Said, "Man, you really need to talk to this guy named Jeff Spadafora." Jeff used to be the director of Halftime Institute Coaching Worldwide, and wrote this book called The Joy Model, which is a fantastic book, and I use it in my men's groups now.
Yeah, I think I was at one of your lunches.
Yeah,
had a little page of that, or a little bit of that.
Yeah, so thanks for the
cool.
plug again.
Yeah.
It always comes back, God gives us these relationships, and a lot of these people become speakers, and so I was talking with him online, and he was telling me, Dan, I'm really excited for you. It's like something you expect a coach to say, because I just think God's got you right where he wants you, and things are going to be changing around. And I said, what are you smoking, man?
You sound like Isaiah's friends talking to him.
So yeah, whatever, Jeff, but
or not Isaiah's. Who's the dude that went through all the struggle?
Jeremiah?
No. The historic Old Testament, like God takes away all his cows and his kids.
And Job.
Yeah,
Job. Yeah, how can we forget that?
Right, when Job's friends are like, "Hey, it's gonna be fine," and you're like, "I've got boils all over my body."
How does that spell out fine?
All of my kids just died.
Exactly.
I'm glad none of those things happened.
But anyway, he's doing these groups called The Way with some executive leaders in Denver, and it was an expense, and it's costly to drive down there once a month, but he
so
did.
are funerals.
Yeah,
and
good way to say that, man.
Yeah.
So that was life changing. And
how was that relationship with your wife through that time? Like,
it was hard. I mean, my wife.
She's terrified by this point.
She was. Alona has always been an incredible helpmate, and we've always had an amazing marriage. But that I think she was scared, and she didn't know what to do. She was incredibly encouraging. I mean, I still got bookmarks of the verses that she was writing me and the prayers that she was praying for me. But one of the things that if I think about long enough, I'll start bawling here. But
got tissues right there.
but and I've shared this even publicly in some of the speaking opportunities. So that's the other thing I get to do is I get to speak in different conferences and training sessions, which I love. But I try to bring purpose to the pain I've experienced by bringing in some of that stuff.
Yeah.
And I've talked about how that there's things that I lost there in that year that I'll never get back. And it's not loss of marriage, loss of trust or anything, but deep things that I feel that I never thought I'd be in a place where I couldn't provide anything for my wife. Emotional support, encouragement. I felt I wasn't providing finances.
Yeah.
And she weathered a really, really difficult year, and I wouldn't be here without her for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, God bless. And I hope that,
Yeah.
you don't have a season like that again
Me
anytime
too.
soon.
But like,
Is your face stronger after it?
Oh,
In a way, or is it actually dinged now?
So I'd love to share just a couple thoughts along that might bless some people that are listening, because I can only imagine the people that follow you that there's some people listening that they're, like I said, in that season going into it. And one is just isolation's a choice, that you don't have to make.
Yeah.
And
it's not good for anybody.
No. And so, we need to find people that those trusted, collaborative, confidential, safe environments, like what we're trying to provide in our groups, or even if just
our counselor,
therapist,
or neighbor.
Yeah. And here's the other thing. So several things I think that really brought me out of that was just consistency. I still was doing my spiritual practices and things. They didn't mean anything, but I didn't drop them.
Yeah.
And I was pressing through. And then I met with a pastor, and I'll just say his name because a lot of people know him.
Shout outs are welcome here.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, so in addition to Jake Roberts, my pastor for life, who I called Shep. Pastor Carl, I met with Carl, and I need to talk to Carl. And
Carl's at our foundation.
Yeah,
so.
and a lot of people, I'm sure, listening know Carl and have experienced his heart for people. And he sat across the table with me, and hopefully he'll listen to this because, and I've told him too, but a lot of people in that situation would just say, come on, just suck it up, or like the coach I told you about. It's like he meant well, and he has got the same kind of heart, but I love where you're at. Things are going to change, but he really took in the gravity of it. And then in tears in his eyes across the table, he just spoke life into me and blessing. And he just one after another. This is what I see in you, Dan. You amazing marriage, father, and you are one of the most intense, disciplined people I know. One of the most, just went on and on and on about what he saw in me, and I just felt something ignite and change. And this is something now that that has made me a more powerful, impactful person. Is just speaking life into people. And, there's times for high challenge, for sure, but speaking blessing. So I went to this men's retreat, and one of the exercises was pretty intense, spiritual, immersive exercises. And you're with a group of 3 other guys for like 15, 20 minutes. And you're speaking blessing into each other. You speak it physically, and you actually kneel before the other men, and you receive it. Powerful.
Yeah.
But then you stand up, and you're locked arms, and you speak blessing without any words for like 15 minutes.
Wow. Well, I've heard some weirder stuff.
Yeah, I know that sounds really weird, but I can still see the eyes of those guys, and I could sense what they're communicating.
Well, and I feel like the laying of hands that a lot of churches do for prayer or to send off a new church plant or things. It's like, we're called not to devil in, dance in the dark arts and things, but there are definitely powers and sensations that, I think that's why a lot of the way I imagine God is almost like the rest of the universe that you can't measure.
Yeah. Yeah.
In some ways. And is just all there, threading it all together. And his ways are mysterious to us. And we can't, just because science can't prove it doesn't mean it ain't real.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. And just so we don't do that in our groups. 15 minutes of staring at each other, that's weird. But
yeah.
No, it was powerful. But, so those practices, just getting it in a community, having that, that pastor speak life into you. And then, here's one of the other things, just a combination of things, and I'll mention one other because this might be helpful. Is I took a full day away. I went up to Estes Park. I love to hike. I brought my journal.
Your wife's like, don't go on any high point places.
She didn't know that until just recently.
Oh, wow.
She never knew that story, the fullness of it.
Right.
So I went up, and so Jeff, I told you, he said, I got some questions I want you to journal on. And one of them was, what is it that you really, really want? And here is the powerful thing is that I want to share is I was just begging for God to give me some breakthroughs. And so I gave myself permission to just journal. I've journaled about 10 pages. This is what I want. And I took kind of different quadrants, my spiritual life, my financial life, my discipleship, my speaking, just every kind of component, dimension of my life. And this is what I want. And I gave myself full permission just to express that to God.
Yeah, you might not get it all.
Yeah. And, but here's what blocked me. And my faith is like, well, I should not want what I want, but what God wants. Right?
Yeah.
But 3 times in the Gospels, Jesus said, "What do you want?"
Yeah.
And most times it was obvious. A guy blind.
Right.
I want to receive my sight.
Right.
But it was that place that he put him in is to voice it, to acknowledge it, that brought the change.
Yeah. Yeah.
And there's something, like you said, mysterious about that.
Well, and really, I think, okay, what do I want? And not for me, God, but for you. What do you want me to be? I was reminded when you were talking about your conversation with Carl and really kind of feeling reinvigorated for life. And I think it's still on my Facebook page as a favorite quote from Henry Ford. Whether you think you can or think you cannot, you are correct. And like he really helped you to believe in you again. And that's what was kind of the most broken a little bit.
Yeah.
No,
that's good. That's good.
And I don't know. I don't even know if Henry Ford was a Christian or a thinker in that capacity, but that's what I was hearing there. And that's probably Carl recognized that within you and that you needed just a little encouragement at that moment.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's good. That's a good point. You got to know when to speak life into someone and speak challenge. We need both, but he discerned that season.
Yeah, that's great.
But anyway, so this
Sorry
experience,
that
I just want to encourage those listening is to just dream about what you want, and if you're a person of faith or not, there's something powerful about just voicing it. So what came out of that time for me, and here's the other thing that kind of helped me was, I think about, well, it should be what you want, God, and I still believe that 100%. I want to fall in line with that. But here's the thing. In Psalm 37, verse 4, I believe it is, it's delight yourself in the Lord, and he will give you the desires of your heart.
Yeah.
And sometimes he doesn't give it to us until we recognize it and voice it and own it. And then sometimes we don't allow us to see that a lot of times if we're endeavoring, we're not perfect, but if we're endeavoring to follow what God wants, his desires are our desires.
Right.
He implants them.
Did you read my blog last month?
No.
Oh, it was Fateful, Grateful, and Plateful.
Oh, nice.
About all the things we got going around here with the rebrand and new chapters and whatever. But the fateful part was where I spent most of my time. And where I kind of boiled down to is, well, I was talking about the intersection of God and free will, right? And with something's fateful, it's either fated to be and it's outside of you or God or anybody's control, or, God bends the world a little bit, right, for his purposes. And where I boiled it down was, the goal is really to be partnered with God. He's got the power, but you got the hands and the feet and the mind that are here on this earth right now. Yeah. And so if you're swimming in the same direction, you're going to notice it if you're bumping your head against
absolutely
not his plan, right? And so that kind of goal of just like seeing how, whether you're in the flow or you're, in God's path or whatever, they're all kind of different phrases for the same experience, which is being doing what you're supposed to be doing.
For sure. But I think there's something liberating about that, and this is what I've found in a lot of my coaching is oftentimes people don't really know what they want.
Yeah, totally.
And that is a powerful gift I can help them with.
Yeah.
And so I labeled all this out, and I came down to like 3 buckets. One was speaking more, training more, coaching, and then discipleship or transformation through groups, one-on-one, and so on. And I came up with just kind of what I thought to be at that time, the big hairy goal concepts. And it's been amazing. I just spent some time this last weekend journaling on this, and I've blown by every single one of them.
That's awesome.
In each category.
That's really great. Let's move on to your family.
Okay.
You've had a lot of nice things to say about
Ilona.
Ilona.
Yep.
Gosh, it's such a hard name for me to remember for some reason. Tell me about, was that love at first sight? What was it about she and you that attracted the two of you together?
Well, I noticed her. I mean, she's very, very appealing, and she's a very attractive person.
A little exotic.
Yeah, you think Bermuda, like Bermuda, Bahama.
Right.
It's kind of
Well,
cool.
plus you're a Wisconsin kid, right?
Exactly, yeah. Yeah, so that was the first attraction, but, her kindness, her care for people, her ability to just light up a room with her presence, those things, and then her faith, her deep faith, really attracted me to her. And I know, looking back, she was a lot more mature than I was, and she had a huge impact, more than I realized, on my own spiritual journey. Because I wanted to be the man that God wanted me to be for her as we became more, serious about dating and thinking about marriage and things. But at first, she thought that I was just a Don Juan and
right.
one of many.
Rico Suave. You were. What was your faith? You were just a student at that time, so you hadn't done anything yet.
No,
necessarily.
No, yeah. So actually, she kind of fell for me quicker than I did for her, because I was a Don Juan.
Right. And then she was like, wait a second, am I so sure?
Yeah, but she won me over for sure over time, and so we dated for a couple years, and then we got engaged, and she lived in Bermuda, so she had graduated already, so she went back and worked for a year in Bermuda.
Oh wow. And maybe you had to leave even because of visas and things
exactly,
like that. Probably.
Yeah. So we were working on the fiancé petition, and then we got married and jumped into full-time ministry. I was still senior, my senior year, and she, we jumped into a church on staff even while I was finishing up school, and been together ever since.
Wow. So she's been there every step of the way, just about in your professional journey.
Yeah, and what's kind of fun now is, earlier on, before we had kids, we did everything together. It was like pastoring, and now it's been kind of fun because she's got some incredible gifts and things to offer women and anyone. But it's been fun. We've done these coupled retreats together.
Sweet.
And she leads portions of them with me.
Nice. Well, and she's probably got some free space opened up. Your youngest is a little more self-sufficient now. Your boys are almost, how old are your boys
My
now?
boys are 21 and they're in the Navy.
Okay, both of them.
Yep.
Are they best buddies? And
No, not really. They're both in California now, at least, instead of on separate coasts, which they were for a while. But they connect, but not as much. They got their own lives, but they stay connected, but not as tight as they were.
If you've listened, you know that I asked for a one-word description of your kids. So would you be willing to name both of your sons and then follow up with your daughter, and all with a one-word description?
That's a challenge, buddy.
Yeah, I know.
You're putting me on the spot here. So no, Seth and Joel are my twins. Seth is a submariner in San Diego, and I would say that he is a jovial person. He really connects with people. He kind of loves life and
whimsy
just has fun.
And humor and all that stuff.
Yeah,
that's a nice word.
Yeah.
And how about Joel?
And Joel is in linguistics intelligence in Monterey. He's just brilliant, and I would say that he is a creative, free spirit person.
Historically, when I heard the term linguistics, I didn't really know what that means, but Allison Seebeck, you must know Allison by now.
I know of her, yep.
She's that was her college education.
Is that right?
Linguistics, and she educated me a little bit, and it's a complicated thing for really smart people.
Yeah.
So kudos on that.
Yeah, so he's studying Persian.
Oh, wow. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, we might need it depending on how things going around here.
No
in
kidding.
The months and years ahead.
No kidding.
So last, but not least, is your daughter.
Yeah, so Isabella, she's 15.
I met her.
And so one of the unique things about our kids and our story and our journey is speaking family, talking about that. All of them are adopted, so special, amazing stories with each one of them. So she's from Guatemala. And so Isabella means consecrated to God or beautiful. And one of the things that I'm speaking into her is that she is a rescuer. And so I tell her, I said, you are consecrated to God, and you've been designed to rescue and help people. And she just loves people, and she kind of gravitates towards the outcast and goes after them, tries to make them feel comfortable. And there's a downside to that too. That is a challenge sometimes if especially teens trying to figure out who they are and all that.
Some of them are dangerous. They
can get sucked in, and so we've had some challenges there, but she's doing great. And with that, but she has a huge heart for people. That's
sweet. Any other things you'd like to say about family in general, or even about your folks or your siblings?
I just. This is one thing that I think it's very easy for people that maybe listen to your podcast and follow you. It's so easy, isn't it, when we have all these career vocational goals and aspirations and these drives. It's so easy to forget the importance of family until you don't have it anymore. and so the work-life balance is an oxymoron that I just don't agree with, but there is a prioritized life in leadership, and if we don't prioritize being healthy givers and leaders to our families, we really have nothing. And so that would be my thought. The pastor's heart coming on me, and the reason I say that is because I'm coaching some folks now where they're having a rough time, and they've lost their spouse because of choices they've made or what have you. It doesn't have to be that way. But even in terms, I think one of the things we're all, regardless where you're on the spectrum of faith, religion, politics, or whatever, we're all looking for and longing for a greater sense of meaning and satisfaction and mission, mission, right? And so I've thought about this often as probably I would say one of the most difficult vocations in the world is being a pastor. I mean, you got the expectations of every single person, and I've never been so criticized. I've never been so brutally treated as a pastor in what I've done outside of that. But I always had a refuge in my home, and I'd come home and it's like, God, thank you for this. So that is worth fighting for, doing whatever that we possibly need to or can do, not just to preserve or maintain, but to make incredibly healthy and full of meaning and joy.
Yeah, I dig it. Time to move on to politics.
All right. I don't know if I'm the best guest for politics, man.
Is it just not something you follow, or you?
I do a little bit, and I think probably my what I enjoy doing the most is people of faith. Like a Rob Woodward, a Don Overcash, and I really, really enjoy supporting those individuals and praying for them hard because they're needed, and it's a brutal. I guess maybe politics and pastors might be similar vocations. But they just get lambasted on so many fronts, and so I try to support and encourage those people a lot.
I had Tom Lucero on here some 6 or 8 weeks ago. I don't know if you know him, but he's been a conservative strategist of sorts and served in some office here and there. And he and Leah Johnson together have a leadership development program. Leah's kind of liberal. Leah. Yeah, she's great too. So anyway, he was pitching me on kind of checking this program out a little bit, and I've got some notions of political office. But during our podcast, he said, there's 3 things. You got your business and your family and your political office, and almost everybody can only keep 2 of them working good. And so if you get into political office, expect some struggle. To which my response was, is it okay if I just focus on my business and my family and half-ass it on the political side? Because I don't want my family or my business to struggle for that service. And that's, I think, part of the challenge of politics in today, and you referenced it even in mentioning Don and Rob, that there's there's a toll a lot
There's
of
a
times.
cost,
Mental, emotional, at least, if not financial.
or even character. Is like you get land blasted, and whether a lot of that stuff is totally malicious and false, but it sticks with people.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so I got to tell you a story. So for example, I get a call. I'm pastoring. I get a call one day from another pastor. He said, Dan, I just had to hear from you because I just can't believe it because you're a person of integrity. But I heard you were embezzling money from the church and that you're getting fired.
Oh, shoot. Oh, snap. I mean,
Yeah. So like, wow, where did that come from? And all these accusations that float around that just stick with you. And
right.
and I really believe, and this is one of the things I try to encourage, and those that are in political realms, man, I just so thank you for what you do, because it's detail and stuff that I just gloss over. I see the importance of it, but I just can't imagine being in that world. So I'm so grateful for
you
those
don't have
that
a future life in politics.
No.
Period. End of story.
Probably not.
Who do you think? If you have somebody like national stage wise that you think is doing a really good job, like are you a Trump guy? Are you a DeSantis guy? Are you are they all just a bunch of goofs?
I just wish Trump would have some filters, and then some.
So yeah, no, I was joking with my friend Aaron Everett on the most recent podcast, and we basically described the Republican Party as the Washington Generals.
Yeah. Which
is the team that plays the Harlem Globetrotters and gets beat up all the time, and is just perennially losers, no real leadership or anything like that.
I it's just so here's something. Years ago they used to talk a lot about privatization. The concept of you can be one thing personally and one thing in public. Mm-hmm. And now we've seen, 20 years later, the full
we have
effect
a personal brand now.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I guess I love it when people, so here, for anybody aspiring to political offices, here's one thing I want to encourage you with is some of the people like, and I'm not saying this about Heidi, but I saw some of your posts about Heidi.
Yeah, yeah.
And I really liked a lot of things that she stood for, and I was really kind of rooting for her, personally.
She came on my podcast.
I know, man.
Thanks, Heidi.
So I loved that, and I'm not saying this about her at all, but what I've noticed is some people that do get a platform, and have strong convictions, and we need strong leadership, and I believe we need strong character. So we're people that what they're doing in public is the same who they are in private. I would go for anybody, even if I disagreed on certain positions with them, for that reason, because we need that in our country and our communities.
That's
right?
Like when you were talking about Trump, I was like, well, the one thing maybe that I really appreciated about him is like, he means shit when he says it.
Yeah.
Like there's nobody whispering in his ears what to say because he just says shit.
And that's one of the things that made him so popular and attractive to people. It's just like, well, man, if you could just learn a little filters on Twitter,
tact,
it's like stuff like that. But here's what I want to encourage is I think we need a wise political leaders where. So one of the enlightening things I experienced, I took part of this leadership program, very similar to other communities like Fort Collins and Loveland has this leadership development. And I went to the Capitol, and I saw all the ins and outs of what transpired in Nebraska, and I walked away from there thinking even greater appreciation for political leaders, but also was like, if I ever did get called in that arena, is that it's okay to not always voice the strength of your conviction.
Yeah.
To gain support, and this is kind of the wise, how's that saying go? Innocent as doves, wise as serpents.
Yeah.
And I think some political people shoot themselves in the foot by being too dogmatic and too forthright in some certain issues when they could pare back a little bit and just not really
chase off quite as many.
I did this as a pastor in some ways, and I know that's going to sound heretical for people of faith, but there were certain issues that I knew that could blow up and divide a church. And I'd be very soft on those issues, not public, hardly ever. And if someone asked me directly, I would answer them, but very, very carefully.
What are those issues?
Yeah, we could get. You talked about free will. There's some context there.
Right. Like
free will and predestination.
There's some joke that the Presbyterian falls down the stairs. He's like, "Oh, I'm sure glad that's over," or something like that.
That's good.
Anyway, well, I think that's a good recap here. Our final segment, and which is good because I got to have a potty break here soon, so don't go run too long on this one.
Sure.
Your LoCo experience.
Yeah.
The craziest experience of your lifetime that you're willing to describe, for sure.
My most crazy experience?
Yeah.
Well,
I mean, the Coyote Ridge seemed pretty crazy, but
that was, yeah. So preaching to 3,000 pastors in Liberia is pretty crazy. Most recently, I went skydiving, so I got to my bucket list this year. I went skydiving, and then the other bucket list thing I did Long's Peak.
Nice.
From 2 a.m. till 5 p.m.
Nice.
It was one of the most physically demanding things I've ever done, but that was pretty crazy.
You recommend it?
I do.
I haven't done it yet, but I've been thinking about it.
It was
before I get too old.
Yeah, well, that's one of the reasons I did. I'm 53, man, so I was like, I better do this pretty soon.
Right.
No, it was awesome. It was awesome. But the most crazy thing, leaving everything and coming here.
Right.
I mean, that was probably the most
biggest leap of faith,
crazy thing I've ever done in my life.
Yeah.
You know.
Are you glad? Like, you could just be like a lead pastor at some other big church somewhere, right?
Yeah, no, I'm super glad because, I mean, so here's what, just in the last 2 years, I think, for the first 5 years, I knew I'd go through identity crisis. Is like, I didn't really feel like a fit fully in the church anymore. I didn't feel like a fit yet in the business world. And now I know I fit, and I bring the best of both those worlds, I think.
Knitting them together.
Yeah, and I just love what I'm doing. And someone, if they were to recruit me for a lead pastorate position and give me buku dollars, I would never do it.
Yeah.
And I believe that there are some that even look at what I'm doing as like, I wish I could do that.
Do you dream about having Kingdom Way grow beyond like Northern Colorado and Denver? Is Denver a first step toward expansion?
Yeah, so part of our vision is like we've been blessed to get some pretty fabulous speakers connected to us, and so our vision was like, man, I'd love to, for our events anyway, is to take that same person while they're in town, do an event here in Northern Colorado, because I just think face-to-face and local is so powerful, and I never want to lose that.
Yep.
And then transplant that into Denver, which we started doing, and I'd love to even do Cheyenne. You know, you just got 3 different places.
Yeah.
And, you know, so one of the scriptural principles is be my witnesses, Acts 1:8, in Jerusalem, Judea, and Samaria, and then the uttermost parts of the world.
Yeah.
So we're really focusing on our region.
Yeah.
And then, I'm already doing some. We do. I don't know if you know this, but we got a Liberia ministry.
Oh, you do?
We have a weekly radio program that reaches 4 countries there.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that idea.
Yeah. And then I was Trinidad and Tobago. I did a conference with the CEO there this past spring. And so we're trying to do
really heart for third world kind of
trying
stuff.
to do some groups there. And so, but as far as nationally, I can't share a lot, but I think it's coming.
Yeah. Well, I think you got some big things coming still. So remind everybody, I guess, one more time where to snoop out Kingdom Way.
if you're interested in anything like what you've heard today, check us out on kingdomwayministries.net, and you can go to all the things there. We have most everything we do that I've talked about today on there. And if you want to connect with me, just hit the contact button, send me an email. Love to connect with you with call, coffee, Zoom, or
put
whatever.
yourself on the mailing list there even.
Yep.
Yeah, it's a great organization. So thanks for spending the time.
Brother, man,
it's been a joy.
It's been fun.
Godspeed.
Thanks for hosting me. You too.
I love it.
Thank you for listening to this episode. This is Alma Ferrer, producer of the LoCo Experience podcast. If you enjoyed this program and would like to support the show, please share it with your favorite people and leave us a review. To see upcoming guests, behind-the-scenes footage, and more, follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn at The LoCo Experience. Subscribe to never miss the latest interview, and until next time, stay LoCo.